Hello friends, welcome back. We are discussing security governance through principles and policies. We have discussed security principles like confidentiality, integrity, availability, non-repudiation, access control in somewhat greater detail in past. You can refer my last videos. We have discussed how these security principles are actually enforced in a security policy, and I have given you the example of cryptography. For example, how encryption is used to achieve confidentiality, and how non-repudiation is used, how hashing can be used to achieve integrity. So these are the different techniques to achieve the desired security principle which we want to use in our security policy. So a lot of heavy words. We should know the relationship. We should know how they exist in the information system ecology. We have also discussed about AAA: identification, authentication, authorization, accounting, auditing. We have discussed protection mechanism, what is defense in depth, what is meant by serial control and parallel control, abstraction, data hiding, and encryption. Now, at this stage, if you are referring Cybex 9th edition book and my videos, you will be able to have a storyline in your mind, which will actually form some sort of foundation to understand further, to understand new concepts which are gonna come in the coming domain. What we are gonna do today is we will be discussing briefly about this security governance, security function, and different organizational processes. Let's see if I can cover it quickly in one video. Otherwise, I may divide the video into 2 and 3 parts. So if you remember my third video, I think second or third video, there I actually draw this diagram which shows the relationship between corporate governance, IT governance, and security governance. All right, so these governance are actually the management or the orchestration of the different silos in a company. Corporate governance, or some people say enterprise governance, is basically managing the bread and butter of the business. The reason why a business exists, that reason has to be sustained. Like if there is a telecommunication company, it may have a different objective than a company who is in finance or banking or healthcare. So that's corporate governance, managing the structure of the company to achieve its vision, mission, goals, and objectives. Right now, since we are living in this IT age, we are not in a Stone Age or Bronze Age. Those days are gone. Everything is IT driven, so we have IT governance. IT is required to connect companies to different vendors, to internet, or to facilitate communication. Whatever is needed, IT is there. So there is a governance and a structure required to manage IT as well. So that's IT governance. So IT governance complements corporate governance. Then we have security governance, the reason why we are studying CISSP. Now, there are different drivers for corporate governance. For corporate governance, we have the financial profit a company has to make, its share value has to be maintained, and quarter and quarter growth a company has to make. So that may be one of the reason. Government or organizations, they have their own different objectives, goals, visions, and mission. Similarly, IT has got some SLA driven system in place which provides a specific services to a specific units of the business. So that's IT governance. What is the driver for security governance? So this question comes, um, you know, there are many reasons. why we need security governance. One of the reason is that we want to have a good business continuity plan in place, that we the business and the IT system, it all has to be available at all the time, and we should have enough contingency planning, disaster recovery planning. So those kind of thing has to be addressed by a different governing body which do not have any stake in IT governance or corporate governance, right? So that's why security governance exists. And it is mandated. Sometimes it is mandated by industry guidelines as well, or sometimes we have license requirement as well. If we are processing some payment or digital credit cards and digital currency, cryptocurrency, so there may be some licensing requirement which will be handled by security governance. There will be some industry guideline as well which may drive security governance. There may be legislative, regulatory and compliance requirement which will force us to have a different section in the security governance team to look after these things. So overall, I have taken this definition from the book about security governance is basically the implementation of a security solution and a management method that are tightly interconnected. So it's not only the fancy security solution we put in place, or we have like high profile managers who are sitting there as a security architect or security officers, but both the things they have to work together and provide competent services, security services, so that security is affordable, it's cost effective, it's complementing, it's not making a bottleneck to the business, and it of course enables security in the IT governance, but it doesn't block the operation of IT governance. So this is how the positioning of security governance is there in the ecology of this whole enterprise governance, right? Now, coming to a different term which we use often is third party governance. So what is third party governance? Third party governance is basically it may happen from two sides. Sometimes government can enforce actually a liability on a company, that they must have a third party auditing mechanism or a third party investigator uh, which has to provide some sort of report, so that the company is in a healthy state for public. So then we may have a third party governance which will work with security governance to provide or to produce those outcomes, right? So it's defined as a system of external entity oversight. It may be mandated by law, it may be mandated by regulation, industry, or standard, or some contractual obligations or licensing requirement also force for some third party governance, right? So this is one way of looking into it, or this is one type of it. The other type is of third party governance is that, let's suppose you have a company and you outsource some of its function to a different company. Take an example of a bank, and a bank is its core business is doing the banking and financial products, but it may outsource the customer care department to a different company which is more cost effective. Then whatever security policies or guidelines exist for the bank, not all of them, but most of them has to be also maintained by the call center. So in that case, the bank itself, it will initiate a third party governance system which will look after the call center department, right? So this is another type of third party governance that happens, right? So an outsider investigator on an audit or an auditor is actually designated by a governing body or hired by a target organization. So the designation of an auditor by a governing body is in the case when we are liable to provide some reports or some sort of compliance to government, or we may hire some auditor to do auditing for a company or for a vendor, which is in business with us. So in both ways, third party governance is actually required. Now, in third party governance, there is one important thing which happens is documentation review. It's not only third party governance, any type of audit or any type of investigation, documentation review is one of the key component of that whole exercise. Now, what happens in documentation review? Basically, if you are gonna do some audit to a company, you may go for an on-site assessment. But before any auditor goes to an on-site assessment, he must have some set of checklist or criteria which he is gonna do assessment for, right? So that checklist and criteria is maintained by any company in a documented way, which has to be complete and comprehensive enough so that next step or next assessment can be done by an auditor. Otherwise, it will be a waste of time. And this type of documentation review, if the documentation is complete, then the organization is given ATO, basically authorization to operate. So ATO can be issued if actually if it maintains all the documentation, and if it complies to the claimed the claimed what should I say, the claims of the compliance, basically, right? So I think the wording which I have written here, ATO, authorization to operate, can be issued if failed to provide sufficient documentation for third party. I think this sentence is wrong. Apologies for that. So ATO is provided, authorization to operate is provided if there is sufficient document. If an organization is failed to provide sufficient documentation, ATO will not be provided. And in some cases, a temporary ATO can be provided, for situations where you already had an ATO which is expired, but you have provided the complete documentation. So you get a temporary ATO, and then there will be an assessment, you will get an ATO. So that kind of thing happens. So yes, so I think that should be sufficient for this video. Here we have discussed security governance, its position in the whole enterprise ecology, and what is third party governance, what is ATO, what is temporary ATO, why we do third party governance. And yes, one of the key component of security governance is that it seeks to compare the security processes and infrastructure used within the organization with knowledge and insight obtained from external sources. So these external sources could be different security framework or different security best practices and guidelines, and is always based on a defined security policy, right? Before I close the video, I will encourage you to compare this whole concept of principles and policies, with your experience when you were in class 11th or 12th, and when you started studying physics. You must have gone through this whole initial exercise of understanding units and dimension. So units and dimensions are the physical terms which we make to make sense of the physical realities around us. Like if we are going to study about a matter, then matter has got mass, length, charge, magnetic field, those kind of things. So those things like mass, length, electric field, So these are the properties of matter, right? So that's the same equivalence here in information security is confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and these things are actually taken in consideration to make a framework which gives rise to security policy, and this security policy is used as an engine to govern the security of a company, which is called security governance actually. I hope you like this video. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up, and you can always put in comments your feedback or any question you have. Thanks for watching the video. Let's meet into another video, next video, where we will talk about security function.